our record, the Digital Gangster album had like 8 people on it. And then if we wanted to like take it off Spotify, everyone would have to vote. Like that could be a way of looking at it.
Agree. Let's say that we distributed tokens based on word count or something. Like you and me would obviously be able to influence the DAO, rather effectively.
Right.
K-Flay maybe gets a say on her song or something like that. But that there's just a huge that's like where I'm saying about the concentration of like the voting power and tokens. If we gave everybody equal say in it, then you also have the int 80 could be the dissenting vote that keeps us from removing ourselves from Spotify. Right. But the programmatic nature of it, or the fact that it's done, there isn't anything really arbitrary. It's all very deterministic. Like the types of behavior that a DAO has is interesting, because you take that human element out of it, of, let's say, greed.
You're tuned to the ArCast, where we talk about the blockchain on the ArCast and how your data remains. It's the ArCast, where ArDrive is the topic, censorship-resistant permanence. Yeah, we got it. What's up, friends? It's Andrew from ArDrive, back with another episode of the ArCast. This is episode 9 with YTCracker, who is a nerdcore pioneer, a hacker, an artist, a producer, a father, and a cool guy. So I really enjoyed this conversation, and it was nice connecting with an old friend. A lot of exciting news in the ArDrive world. We have the March Bounty, and the theme is Ukraine. So we want to have our theme be anything related to Ukrainian history, culture, first-person accounts of what's going on. And be sure to check out the ArDrive Valet page. Basically, you can hire us to upload your files permanently and save a bunch of steps. We'll be dropping a video on that soon. Check out the video I did for BT, who's a EDM artist who released a new project via Arweave called The Orbs. Finally, if you have ArDrive tokens, make sure you have them locked on Community XYZ. We have a DAO governance vote coming up. The big ones are always on the first of the month. The small ones are every Wednesday. And finally, sign up for the newsletter. The new one goes out February 28th. This is my interview with YTCracker. This week on the ArCast, I've got a friend, collaborator, musician, rapper, hacker, entrepreneurial guest who has been in the blockchain space like before anyone I knew was in the space. He was in it. His rap name is YTCracker. His government name is Bryce Case Jr., but I know he doesn't trust the government, so...
How you doing, MC Lars?
How did we meet, man? Because I think this is like interesting, because all my other guests on this show I'm hosting aren't people I've made records with or toured the country with, or even the world.
Yeah.
So how did we meet?
How did we meet? That's a great question.
It must have been at like Comic-Con or Nerdapalooza.
I was thinking it was Comic-Con with the Aquabats and the Yo Gabba Gabba folks.
2007.
Somewhere around there, yeah. The memory gets a little fade. It's not on the blockchain, so it's a little bit, we can't verify the dates exactly. That sounds about right. But
because we did that long tour with Frontalot in 2008.
Correct.
So we
did the G4 stuff. I think the G4 stuff was around 2007. There was just a whirlwind of things, but I'm pretty sure that the IRL started in
2007.
Yeah, that sounds about right.
Because we're roughly the same age, and all of a sudden, like, people who don't know, not to get too inside baseball, like nerdcore briefly became this like press phenomenon where like, oh, nerdy people rapping about technology, this is different. And this guy MC Frontalot coined it. This guy MC Chris, who did cartoon voices for Adult Swim, popularized it. And then they were like, well, who else is in the scene? And so there was me doing my literature raps, and then there was the rapper from Colorado who hacked NASA satellites and defaced government sites, who was like the mysterious dude who rapped over Nintendo beats. And that was you. And it was like, well, it's obviously we had to team up and make a record together, because I don't know, it just felt like fate. So it was like fated.
Marriage of styles, marriage of content, all the above. Yes, indeed.
not to incriminate yourself, but what are some of the things you did around that time?
I think the statute of limitations is up on most of those things, but yeah, I've always kind of treaded the line, somewhat chaotic neutral in alignment. But everything really, a lot of the money that I made in that period of time was from spamming cam sites and also BizOp leads, like diet pills, those types of things. But a lot of the ability to do that was subverting security controls that sites had as far as rate limiting or account creation, like mitigating the ability to create accounts and stuff like that. So there was the hacking element was sort of outsmarting and staying a step ahead of the services that we were attacking. But then, largely there's also this hacktivism aspect of stuff, was involved in, things like the Occupy movement, which obviously didn't achieve its intended goal. Things, all the anonymous, type hype stuff that was sort of going around the turn of the last decade, I was pretty involved in. But yeah. Just using computers to affect change on the universe the best we can, I think, is pretty much the primary motivation.
Well, that was what was so dope about getting to know you, because I obviously came up with a background in the whole 19th century transcendentalist movement that endless possibilities are what drive the human spirit. And people like Emerson and Thoreau were so enraptured by all the possibilities of the adolescence of the American dream. And that's what I feel like hip hop in a postmodern way, remixed that mission statement. But you came at it from a similar perspective. And just like Tupac had thug life tatted on his stomach, you had nerd life on your stomach. You kind of took some of his sort of the way Tupac channeled Kerouac and the energy of the post-World War II American bohemian dream, and the way he remixed that with the gangster aesthetic and the style and the flavor, you brought that to your flow and your story, but you kind of were connected to this world I didn't really know about, kind of the crypto anarchist movement. And who's the guy who said that line about the beauty of the bod that you referenced in your rhyme?
Oh, that's Lloyd Blankenship. It was from The Mentor's Last Words. It was a publication in 1986. It was a huge BBS text, but it had to do about hackers being admonished for just their curiosity, their crime of curiosity is kind of what it comes down to. Is that a lot of, now you can get cybersecurity degrees. You can go to school and get a master's degree in hacking. But when I was part of an era where that type of curriculum wasn't really offered, you had to be self-taught and learn things on your own. And in order to learn some of the darker side of things, it's not something that was readily published in books and stuff. So you had to kind of crawl for that information, and then also a lot of self-discovery was important. One of the things that you'd said about Tupac, though, that in my opinion, I don't know if it's a popular opinion at all, but if you look at older Tupac videos, he's a very erudite individual, super into poetry. There's this whole kind of life imitates art sort of thing where he embodied what is thug life. But I honestly think that at his core, he was a nerd, a theater nerd, a literature nerd, and all that stuff. And so a part of that, it said it lends itself to the curiosity of the human mind, and I think that's part of the hacker ethos in a sense. Is again, learning, discovering, challenging yourself, all that stuff.
And you were the first person to really write rhymes and make albums about this stuff. And since we toured extensively around the world, I would hype your lyrics. So I'd learn your lyrics. And so I'd learn things. I'd learn stuff about hacking and tech stuff from your lyrics because I'd be performing your songs with you. And that's a great teaching tool. And it's interesting how you had this whole community of people, and you still do, who gravitated towards your style because it was so unique. And you did songs for that. What was that movie? What was the Hacker Wars movie?
Hacker Wars, yeah, as a documentary about some of that anonymous lulzsec stuff that was going on. I said it at the turn of last decade, but I get the fan mail, a lot of it that I get, some of it, people have come into my music completely with almost no information technology training at all. And then they've used it as a basis for, learning about how just Googling my lyrics. And then eventually you sort of learn these techniques and procedures and tactics and stuff that emerge out of it. And so that's always been something very interesting to me, that, music is a communicative tool. You obviously are, hugely academic and educational in a lot of your lyrics and stuff. You probably bring a lot of people the joys of 19th century literature in the way that you do. I think that's a super cool medium to expose that stuff, though.
It's like, KRS-One and the whole edutainment thing. Like, lyrics you could learn so much from a song that like you can't necessarily learn from a book. Like, I love listening these days when I jog and exercise. I always put on the YTCracker. Probably like once every 2 weeks, I'll have a YTCracker running day where I'll just do shuffle and I'll listen to your stuff, and it'll be like educational and fun and different. But I'll learn little things. Like, one of the ones that stuck in my head is the Bitcoin baron. I'm a Bitcoin baron. I'm scaring the status quo. What's the next line? Got the algo.
They got the crypto dough and that DAO file to blow. Algorithm gonna get him until Prism send us all to prison. That's a dirty living.
And then what's the pump and dump bump? Spread it from the dark web.
Hash function, pumping and dumping, manipulate the market, flood it from the darknet.
And then, so Bitcoin Baron, that was the first rap song that I'd heard anyone rap about Bitcoin. And you were telling me like, yo, Lars, Bitcoin, that's what's up. And everyone was like, well, we'll see. And so people like you who were like up on it, it was cool because it was an educational tool. I remember I asked you in like 2017, I was like, yo, YTCracker, is now a good time to buy Bitcoin? And you're like, it's always a good time to buy Bitcoin.
Yeah.
What brought you into the blockchain sphere from like the hacking world you were in?
So some of the technological aspects of it had sort of made the rounds, and there was whispers on the digital gangster board and stuff. Within the cypherpunk community and hacker community, it's really odd because a lot of hackers didn't really trust it. Naturally, just the natural cynicism of hackers lends itself to be a little skeptical of these trustless systems and everything. But looking into it, I was actually my friend Phil 21. I shout him out in the song, but he had really, really broken down kind of everything that he'd been a miner and basically elucidated the entire kind of concept of Bitcoin and blockchain and stuff to me. And then I did, obviously my own secondary research and stuff. But I think a lot of it just being so close to the community that would adopt such a thing was part of why I had the first mover advantage in that sense. But the technology in and of itself is just a very fascinating one. There was a long considered intractable problem in computer science known as the Byzantine generals problem. And the way that it focuses on like designing trustless systems, blockchain technology like emerged from the solution, that the elegant solution that was in the white paper. And so that's the basis for pretty much most blockchain technology today. There's been some different advances on how it's done, like differences between proof of work and proof of stake type things. But that a lot of the conceptual understanding of that technology, it's hard to grasp. I'm sure I sounded like I was in a cult when I was talking to you about it, or about really to anybody. I mean, when I had first kind of learned about it, I just was evangelizing it super, super hard because I just saw the value in what the problems that it solved.
Well, and it seems like from my learning of it, like I've gotten more into it these past few years. It seems like it came from a two-pronged thing, like Satoshi's white paper, like the first being the recession, right? Like being on the edge of the end of the recession and like not trusting the centralized financial system. And you were doing stuff with Anonymous, which was also about like Occupy Wall Street and like connections with that, being like this whole generation of people who didn't necessarily trust what had happened before. And those two things kind of like, I don't know, you were up on both of those threads. That was part of your journey, part of your story, part of your unique narrative. And then all of a sudden this technology came that kind of offered solutions. And so it kind of was like fated that you would be an early evangelist. But did you feel like it fixed similar problems that you felt like government and society we were facing, or did you have like a political connection to it? I guess that's what I'm wondering, like blockchain technology in general.
I think my core fascination with it was the technology, and that a byproduct of the way the technology functioned, that's where sort of the political epiphany came into play. I've had a lot of experience with banks that have been largely negative, and I'm sure that most people in the world have at this point. And with great power comes great responsibility. Factor in Bitcoin and blockchain in general is that you are empowered to be your own bank. So with that, requires security controls and I mean, I think the same was true maybe in the beginning of Bitcoin, like with Mt. Gox and stuff, but that most people that are buying crypto on Robinhood, for instance, they're just trading in derivatives. Like they don't really own the crypto that they have and stuff. But there's a saying, a maxim that if you don't have the keys, you don't have the crypto type thing. So largely, I would say most hobbyists are just leaving their money on exchanges and stuff. But to be able to actually have some sort of financial instrument that you can remit anywhere in the world within minutes, without like under the cover of law enforcement or government oversight or anything like that, it's a very beautiful thing. It's taking that power back, and I guess the freedom that sort of comes from that privacy, that you're not being tracked with the types of things you're purchasing, even if it's totally benign. Obviously you go to Walgreens, CVS, Target, and they keep a laundry list of the types of things that you've been purchasing and stuff. And I think that some of those, there's been stories even like where Target, I'm probably going to botch the story, but they were able to anticipate that this girl was pregnant. Do you remember that story? Based on her purchases or whatever, they had determined that she was pregnant. There's just a lot of, again, and some of it's very helpful because, you do want ads and things curated towards your purchasing habits, just to ensure that, you're not getting a bunch of things that you don't want. So there is a commercial value to that type of thing, but that some things, you don't really want out in the open. I'm assuming like privacy is something that people say, well, I have nothing to hide, but it's super important just to maintain that self-autonomy. What is that? Is that John, who is Locke? Who is not John Locke was from Lost. Thomas Paine. But what was Locke's first name?
What, John Locke.
John Locke. It was John Locke. Yeah, it was John Locke. Okay, because I was like, I thought that was the guy from Lost, but yeah, that's right. Okay, good. Whew.
And Lost had like, there was a character named Rousseau, which was the character about the social contract, and John Locke was about like preserving life, liberty, and the pursuit of property, right? Yeah. Which was like that being autonomous. I always hear the term being self-sovereign a lot with blockchain people. Do you feel like that's an ultimate goal for it?
So, I mean, there's a bunch of the self-sovereignty movement, anarcho-capitalist, these types of philosophical sort of buzzwords that have been bastardized in some way. That I'm not entirely a statist. I'm probably identify most politically as libertarian, but more of a social libertarian. It's an odd juxtaposition that government, in all forms, like I do think that the private sector does things better. In largely that part of the crony capitalism, the way that the regulatory system is set up, it actually favors kind of these. It favors the types of environment where a free market doesn't really exist. That there are kind of it plays favorites in a way that is detrimental to actual like free market, keeping prices down, avoiding monopolies, like that, those types of things. So but the function of government, I think, is important. The infrastructure, defense, you need certain safety considerations. And Bitcoin blockchain technology, as much as it would like to, does not solve some of that stuff. But one of the interesting things that emerged with Ethereum especially was the concept of smart contracts, which, you and I could enter into a business together and we could basically have a computer manage a robot basically managing our company, to where neither of us could disperse X amount of funds without both you and me signing off on it. No one can abscond with all of the reserves in the company account type thing. That these smart contracts can probably be extended to other governance models within government. Things like deeds to property and stuff can be translated onto the blockchain, and so there are these, I guess, use cases where they would help augment the state in a way, but this self-sovereignty thing, I said, is a little unrealistic. Like, even though Americans, we love our guns and, we love being gangster with them, it doesn't necessarily, but, there's still utility in having some sort of government, representational government. So I wouldn't say that I'm completely, for the movement as it's represented.
So you would you consider yourself a Bitcoin maximalist or no?
No. Largely, there's projects that have a lot of very wordy salad type white papers, and they promise this and promise that and stuff. And I would say 99% of those things, that's just a spitball number, but just a ton of blockchain projects are money grabs, and they're not necessarily in the spirit of what Bitcoin is. And that I appreciate the decentralized nature of coins. So, obviously, like when Ripple came out, as I can see the value of a centralized blockchain for sure, but it doesn't scratch the same itch, I think, that the, decentralized nature and distributed nature of what blockchain was intended to be, as it's fault tolerant, it's redundant, like there's no single point of failure type thing like that. Those are the things about the technology that I really identify with.
What's tight about Arweave is it has this thing called the DAO, which is like the decentralized autonomous organization, where people can like vote on the future of how Arweave uses the Arweave protocol. And I think the DAO thing is really cool because it's like a democratic way to involve people. It kind of skirts around like the idea of being self-sovereign, because as a group, everyone works together and makes choices on what's best about the project.
I would say that there are DAOs that are done correctly, and then other ones that are absolutely not. They're just rug pulls. With blockchain, it's largely unregulated, and it's highly misunderstood by a great deal of people. So as a result, you're not going to. It doesn't have the same amount of due diligence, or there's just too much misinformation that's kind of out there. But that's exactly kind of extension of what I was telling you about, like the business that you and I would start. Like, instead of just you and me, like we can scale that to thousands of people, and then everybody can have some sort of investment, interest in the, you could run it like more like a credit union, where like, because in a credit union, everybody, their contribution to the credit union is like the $35 that you deposit, and then anything over that is just is just icing on the cake for, they can still use stuff with it, but your buy-in, your equity in the union is all equal. Whereas a bank like Wells Fargo or Bank of America, they pay more attention to you the more money that you're storing.
Our record, the Digital Gangster album, had like 8 people on it. And then if we wanted to like take it off Spotify, everyone would have to vote. Like that could be a way of looking at it.
Agree. Let's say that we distributed tokens based on word count or something. Like you and me would obviously be able to influence the DAO, rather effectively.
Right.
K-Flay maybe gets a say on her song or something like that. But that there's just a huge that's like where I'm saying about the concentration of like the voting power and tokens. If we gave everybody equal say in it, then you also have the int 80 could be the dissenting vote that keeps us from removing ourselves from Spotify. So
right.
But the programmatic nature of it, or the fact that it's done, there isn't anything really arbitrary. It's all very deterministic. Like the types of behavior that a DAO has is interesting, because you take that human element out of it, of let's say greed, like where the contract is not only inked in paper, it's ironclad on this distributed blockchain, so that no one can do any really funny business outside of the scope of the contract unless there's some holes in it that haven't been audited properly.
The fact that it's like prescribed, deterministic, that's a great way to put it. The music industry is very much not that, because suddenly a platform can come along that like takes all your streaming revenue, but puts you on everyone's like TikTok app on the homepage. And so like the question, two artists would be like, okay, well, do we want this or not? And like, if someone has the control of the copyright, they can say yes, but the other person might be like, yo, that's not tight. So I think that like Web3 ideally solves a lot of the problems that Web2 gave us. And you and I coming up in that world of old school social media and like starting out with Web1 as ways to promote our music, it solves a lot of those issues. Hopefully. That's me being optimistic. Would you agree that it's...
Well, I don't have the same, like, I think there's a hybridized approach. Like, I don't think that Web3 and, the NFT space and all this stuff is a panacea for the types of ills that musicians suffer from or whatnot. That I think it's interesting, the appropriation of a lot of this technology in the creative space is super cool. That, it's not something I think traditionally was a use case at all. But yeah, like there's the deadmau5 just launched a DAO. I forgot what it's called. But it's a music industry related DAO that's like attempting to do some governance, like some industry governance type thing. That there is there is this empowerment, like I was talking about before, that being your own bank and being your own, like the arbiter of your destiny, that you're going to see a power shift away from a lot of these centralized organizations, and then it becomes more of these unionized, I guess for lack of a better term, people. And if enough like large artists, large organizations pair with smaller indie people and make these equitable transitions into into some blockchain stuff, then we will see a paradigm shift. But I just don't think that the old model is necessarily going to get sunsetted anytime soon. Oddly enough, like it's because there's other more infinitely more famous than you or I musician friends that I have that there's been a lot of a huge push towards people actually buying entire catalogs of artists back. I don't know if you've heard about this or if it's happened to any of your homies, but like some of the larger electronic artists I know, have done things where they're selling their entire catalog for just a set price. But then, now their stuff can get used on, Swiffer commercials and Burger King or whatever else. That they kind of lose that, I guess, creative control, but that there's these gigantic payoffs that are happening, where it's like buying, if you're an insurance agent, people buy your whole book, or what else would be another, like a financial planner type thing, that there's that music in a whole, like is very weird. The space is just interesting, that there's just like touring artists and stuff that are opting to just sell their entire catalogs. They can still make new stuff and they still have the right to perform it, but they're just taking the payday. So those are some things that I think that you could actually solve through some blockchain type things, where you could have DAOs that are buying up, the Beatles back catalog or Michael Jackson or whatever.
What is your feeling about the NFT space? Like, have you done YTCracker NFTs?
I haven't done an NFT yet. I've been getting harassed to do them. There actually is, what's funny is Bitcoin Baron actually is an OG NFT on the Bitcoin blockchain. What I think is cool about NFTs is more the certificate of authenticity sort of thing that it provides with provenance. Like you have this chain of custody. There's just, it has a lot of, the benefits I see are there and not so much in the NFT itself. So I like to see NFT projects that have a meat space component to them.
The main thing that I see on Twitter is people are like, "Oh, why don't you just do save as and save the image? Who cares? You need to pay 10 grand for this monkey GIF, like, or whatever." Right? Like but like you're talking about like the proprietary ownership and showing the chain and the authenticity. And that's what I think is tight about Arweave and like the Ardrive technology, is that like, okay, I can make an atomic NFT and you own, not only do you like own the song, you also own the file.
You could print a fucking Monet. You could like scan the Mona Lisa or whatever. It doesn't necessarily mean, in the same way that people thought that Bitcoin was funny, that it's just these zeros and ones being, thrown around the internet and somehow are worth, something in the real world. NFTs have that same, I guess, problem that is associated with their just functionality and what the asset represents. That people, I think, who get it in the space see it differently. I personally, though, and there obviously is rumblings, and people do understand this, that I'm not going to like name names or snitch or anything like that, but there are large opportunities for the NFT space to launder money in the same way that traditional art has been used.
It was interesting about you and I learning for years how to do this, how to be independent, how to make a living rapping on the road, selling t-shirts. And I think about like if that first tour we did with Frenalot, the 9 weeks of just chaos and just sleeping on the floor and just annoying those guys with our antics.
There is value in those mementos and stuff, and as we've progressed as a more digital society, I mean, our generation is kind of we saw the birth of the two-way pager and the instant messaging and broadband internet. Like we were probably the last ones on the cusp of this. Like my daughter grew up completely differently. She doesn't know a lot of that. Remember Hotline? The red H was incredible. But there's just so much of this.
That's a lyric to it. That's, by the way, YTCracker just quoted one of my lyrics back at us. So
yes, I had to do it. But yeah, that you could actually clout chase it in a way, like you said. That if I have this NFT from this seminal tour or whatever, and then I trade it to somebody, as a collectible. They still can't front like they were there because the blockchain shows this chain of custody that it changed from its original owner. But there probably are collectors and stuff like that would want to, again, some nerdcore historian, in 40 years or whatever, may wish that they had all these little idiosyncratic pieces of our history.
Do you feel like in 100 years, people will look back and be like, man, this is when it became possible to document this? Is this really going to really solve this issue of like the Orwellian dystopian rewrite history?
Again, I believe in, free access to the internet and data and all these kind of hacker concepts that have come out for a long time. But provided the human race doesn't destroy itself and we love each other and we become spacefaring and all this type of stuff and this technology just continues to grow, then, the optimist in me would say that, yes, like this will persist, intelligently. And, as the way that you're talking about it is a way to subvert, oppression and censorship and stuff, I think is the more important, clause. It's not necessarily whether or not the data is preserved for all eternity, until the heat death of the universe, but more so that those that should have access to this data, do have access to this data, and it's available to them.
It's like the philosophy of it continues to work well. And you're someone who's, I feel like you, even though I don't know if you're a black hat or white hat, you do a lot of good for educating people. You know what I'm saying?
I don't have much of a reason to pull capers and commit crime. Like I need my Danny Ocean moment where there's, if I need to build a gang together and do some gangster shit, then I can do it. But yeah, more or less like now, like I leave it, it's a young man's game. Like I love seeing the youngins come up and, it's good to mentor the young criminals of tomorrow, but,
you know whose site is what? Young Internet on,
yeah.
He's dope.
I fucking love Young Internet like that. He's so sick. Yeah. And he's
you've done stuff with him, right? You have like a few tracks with him.
Yeah. I wouldn't even call him my protege. Like he's definitely
that fool's tight. He's
super tight. He's one of my I know he was a fan and stuff, but I'm like one of his biggest fans probably. Like he's what I wish I was in a way. Like just it's like this.
You like open the door for all these fools. Dual core. I mean, I know people be like, "Oh, David built his own career." Okay, he did, but like Mega Ran even gives you props for like showing him you could sample NES games. You kind of allowed me to spread out into these more like political, technological themes that were beyond like what I was doing. So it's interesting how you make waves in the way that you influence people and the way you're like inspired by the next generation. And I don't know, I feel like we're both fathers now. Your daughter's older than my son, but like I'm optimistic about the future, and I'm optimistic when I see videos of you rocking 1,000-seat clubs with theaters with Dead Mouse. Like it always makes me happy that you're still grinding and still killing it. What's good with when can we see you next doing shows with Dead Mouse? Because like that's a dope part of your story now that you rap with him constantly.
We're just buddies, I would say.
Humble brag.
But I mean, it's cool and all, but like I'm in a period in my music. Like I would love to go out on tour with you guys again. I think that would be fun.
That would be tight. It's different, right? Like than you rapping for like 5,000-seat theater over a Dead Mouse beat. They're there to see Dead Mouse, but like if you're on a nerdcore club tour, it's like, oh shoot, YTCracker? What?
No, but it's more like 60,000 people. It was we're doing, I did Red Rocks a few weeks ago. But yeah, like Nocturnal Wonderland, like, so it's kind of like, your Warped Tour days type thing. Yeah, or
here's the other funny story. When I know this is like people listen to this podcast to hear about Web3, and here we are talking about our little music industry victories. This is the last one. This is a great story. The time you got Ed Sheeran into a Wheatus show, and now you're always on the Ed Sheeran guest list.
Yeah. Well, actually, Crypto Cobain. So Kobe, he's a very famous. Your listeners will definitely know who he is. He's just like friends with a lot of people in the London music scene. And Ed Sheeran like used to stay on his couch. But they wanted to go to a Wheatus concert, and so I put Jordan on the list, and then Ed was his +1.
Okay.
So Ed went from +1 on a Wheatus guest list to largest artist in the world, which is fucking great.
With Crypto Cobain, that's kind of like a metaphor for something. I don't know.
I would research, how to maintain and keep your coins yourself secure, stored on like that you possess, like on a Trezor, Ledger, hard wallet, or some air gapped netbook or something like that, where that because again, if the exchange goes down or whatever, you're just numbers in a database at that point. But if you actually have the private keys that are associated with your coins, then you do own it, and that's where the real wealth is.
That's it.
Yep.
Or like getting that Ledger Nano X. And then if you have an Elipal mnemonic metal wallet that you store in a vault, that might be a solution. I don't know.
You can do the paper wallet thing. Yeah, but that's how you own, like really own your coins. Like this, I said, this Robinhood's derivative trading shit is just like,
get out of here with that. Miss me with
that bullshit.
Yo, you rob from the poor and steal to the rich, Robin Hood.
Yeah.
I'm not feeling that.
Not feeling it at all. Zero.
If you want to store your files, on our drive, that's what's up.
I really think it's amazing and awesome. You were talking about the ripple effect. It's amazing how you've come into the blockchain space, and you're doing this is a service and stuff like that. That it's something, again, I think socially and naturally you would progress to this. It's obviously something that is in your wheelhouse. So,
Thanks,
it's awesome to see you, involved here.
Well, it's like you're my Obi-Wan Kenobi in this. I feel like in some ways I schooled you on the rap business game, but like you schooled me in the blockchain space, and like that's what's up. That's cool. We can learn from each other, bro.
Equitable friendships all day, baby. That's exactly what it's about.
Is there anything else you wanted to say before we drop the mic?
Anybody who's adopting blockchain technology is cool in my book. I'm really proud of you. Shout out to Arweave. We out here.
You know, rappers like to rock chains. I rock blockchains. Knock them out the box off Mount Gox, man.
Yeah.
Okay.
True.
Thanks, Bryce Case Jr. Remember to lock your ArDrive tokens at Community XYZ because there's always a lot of exciting things happening with the DAO. And we'll be back in 2 weeks with another exciting interview. Stay tuned. I'm Andrew. This has been the ArCast. We'll see you next time. Thanks, y'all.